Good morning, my friends. Welcome to today's episode, a little rare Friday episode. Today is an episode in the Random Bits series. We're going to explore what I call parentification and then self-trust, and also this concept of moving from victim to power. These are essential, especially moving victim to power. It's called a boundary pivot. It can really help us organize how we respond to people, places, and things that show up in our lives. So it's going to be a little bit random. We're going to get into today's episode. So again, I'm excited to have you here. If you're new to me, I am Marshall Bircher, and I help codependents rediscover and restore their sense of self-trust so they can come to know, love, and live who they are. That's what I'm about, and that's what I've been doing now for, 13 and a half years. All this fun stuff in codependency. So before we get started, I need to share this out to the community. The community it's a safe haven where you can come and get connected to like-minded individuals that are going through similar, even sometimes very almost identical experiences that you are, where you can find support, understanding, connection, tools, and guidance in your journey back to yourself. Now, the community has a set of rules that govern it, and the links, let's see, because this is a little new. So the community is governed by a strict set of rules. Now, above on Facebook, below on YouTube, the link for the community is there, as well as the rules. So you can go review the rules, see if this is a good fit for you, because the community is not safe for everyone, right? No community is, because there are certain elements and certain limits that may not work for you. So that means it's like, it's not compatible. I need to go somewhere else. But if you're fine with the rules that we have in the community, come join us and get support, get guidance, and get tools in your journey back to yourself. So the link's above on Facebook, below on YouTube. I look forward to seeing you in the community. If you're listening via podcast, just go to my website, www.freetheself.com. Go up to the resources tab and go to the community, and you can apply there. The links are also linked. The rules are also linked there when you click on the community. All right. So I'm going to get that shared out now. Let me know how you guys are doing. Let me know your thoughts, how things are for you right now in the comments below while I get this shared out. And there's the linky to it. Okay. Yeah, let me know you're here. So it is nice to see you guys. Glad you're here. Let's dive in. So the Random Bits episode number 17, moving from victim to power, parentification, and self-trust. So there's a lot that's been going on this week. We wrapped up the holiday enrollment. I am so excited to have, 19, 20, 21 people have enrolled. I'm excited to have you as part of my student community. We're going to have some adventures in 2022 with the relationship strategy essentials course and self-trust and the know yourself strategy. All that are coming up here. So I'm excited for that. I've also been, if you're doing this work, if you're a mentor like I am, or you're a healer, you're a therapist, or a coach or whatnot, you got to be doing your own work too. It's part of the ethical component to it, but it's also your own integrity, because we all have our own blind spots in what we deal with. So I've been doing my own work, working in my own therapy specifically with parentification, and that's brought up some really powerful things that I think are going to add to your journey back to yourself. At a minimum, some clarity about what's been going on, because I'm finding that most individuals that have a codependent response or a codependent strategy in relating to others also deal with parentification at some level. So what is parentification? It's being turned, it's where a child is turned into the parent of the parent. So this happened to me around the age of 10, 11. When my mother passed away, my stepmother moved into my life, I became the parent to her. What that means is I was burdened with, a lot of times we say responsible for. I'm going to talk about that more in a moment, but I was burdened with the task of regulating her emotionally and then helping my father and her regulate their marriage. That's abuse. Period. Other aspects of parentification is when you are expected to take on adult responsibilities where the adult won't do that, the parent won't do that. That can include providing money for the home, paying bills, trying to make sure money or food is on the table, things of that, when the parent will not do that. A lot of times narcissistic parents use their children as a surrogate parent. They want to be taken care of. They want the child to, they should be grateful. The narcissistic parent sometimes takes the approach of like, hey, I brought you into this world and you should be grateful for it, and here's how you pay me back. So you're going to take care of this and this and this and this. They abdicate their parental responsibilities and adult responsibilities and burden the child with that. Now, I use that word burden very specifically because what I've discovered in my own therapy is the adult child that has been parentified, later on they're like, I'm responsible for my mom. I'm responsible for their feelings. I'm responsible for what happens to them. That word responsible or responsibility has been impressed upon the child by the parent that's doing the enmeshment. Hey, I need you to do this. Oh, you're hurting me. Don't you see how your choice to be yourself is causing me pain? Oh, you don't want to do that, but then what about me? What happens to my feelings? About my needs? The parent is talking to the child this way, and the child internalizes that as responsibility. The word literally can come out of the parents. You're responsible for this. My quote unquote, I burn in my brain, Marshall, you're responsible for taking care of your stepmother when I'm not here. That is what I was told verbatim. I was told in May of 1990 at the Yellow Front store in Flagstaff, Arizona. I remember it because there was a really distinct event that preceded that was extremely triggering and scary for me, because the woman had a seizure, and my mother died from brain cancer, and we saw seizures for 6 months. So I'm having this huge, what is going on? And my father punished me. He's really upset because I called the ambulance, and he's like, you don't do that. You're supposed to take care of it. I'm like, what the frack is that? So, yeah, that's a form of parentification there. Parentification can happen. Sometimes people bring babies into the world to fill the hole that the adult is feeling. Sometimes when the marriage isn't going well, the one parent turns to the child to use the child to regulate the feelings of the adult, where that adult should really be going to therapy. These are all actions of parentification. Children are not. They're not resources for adult needs. Period. This just blows my mind that adults think they're entitled to that from children. So this is the basics of parentification. I'm still on my own journey in this, but it's made a profound impact to just acknowledge that, wow, the panic, the anxiety, the fixation on their emotional state is all a result of this trauma. It's all a result of how I was harmed in order to become pliable to their expectation. So if this is something that resonates for you, you're not alone and you're not crazy. This happened. It's real. For me, and again, this is fresh work for me, but I'm seeing how normal it was for me. It's like, well, it's normal to just, feel responsible for the other person's feelings all the time. And in my experience, it happened to me so much from different resources, different people in my teen years, where I thought I was responsible for everyone's feelings all the time. I wasn't allowed to have a limit, a boundary. I wasn't allowed to be myself, because when I was, there was severe punishment to that. My punishments, sometimes it was physical. I got slapped for being myself, but most of the time it was emotional isolation and relational isolation. They withdraw approval, they withdraw resource, they withdraw presence and time and warmth from me to punish me, because that's what worked on me. So these are things that are real. And I'm going to continue to share about them as I learn more about my own experience in parentification and this concept of emotional enmeshment that way. So more to come on that. Now, the trick here with parentification is we didn't cause it. This was something the parent imposed. So if you're experiencing this, go gently with yourself, kindly with yourself. And this connects us to self-trust, which is the second thing out of three that I want to touch on today. Codependency and narcissistic abuse by themselves narcissistic abuse works to attack one's natural state of self-trust. Because we're born with self-trust. This is how we learn how to walk, how to talk, how to sense and understand the world, because we are naturally trusting of our senses when we're born. We have an impulse, I'm hungry, I cry, I see something that's funny, I laugh. There's an intrinsic trust built into our self. And through abuse, and specifically gaslighting, the Darvo approach with deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender, those get us to question ourselves. And that introduces the concept of self-doubt, which then is amplified through abuse, through shame and guilt, Darvo, and gaslighting, which damages or even destroys our sense of self-trust and introduces distrust towards our feelings, our wants, our needs, our perceptions, our senses, our limits, our boundaries, our intuition, or even our very body, things like that. And it's from this destruction, this attack on self-trust, that abusive, toxic behaving people gain leverage and power over us to control. This is essentially why we fawn, because we don't have a sense of safety in ourselves or in them. And depending on how well resourced we are, depending on when this occurs, that can happen very quickly or it can take time. Hey, Pamela. Hi, Robin. Thank you on that, Robin. So it's important to understand around self-trust that we are born with it first. It's our natural state. And then we get attacked. And then we learn to distrust ourselves. And it's through this distrust that we become vulnerable to the exploits of manipulation and coercion. And we don't have boundaries. You don't have self. Because I don't trust myself. Why would I access that? This impulse that says no is not something I should have. That's going to get me in trouble. We are contorted against ourselves. Now this happens in parentification, because from what it looks like to me, parentification is an aspect of abuse, especially when the parent itself is narcissistic or enmeshing or controlling, things of that nature. Certainly not mature, right? So now I have the self-trust component. It's kind of cool, because as I've made self-trust a dominant focus in my own work, it's shifting so much of what used to feel stuck. Because initially in my work, it was first focused on regulating nervous system. We got to build capacity to feel. We got to build a sense of safety in acknowledging what we're experiencing in our body, in our mind, in our senses. And so I focused heavily on that. And I kept having this anxiety show up with it. This friction against it. And I'm like, what is that? And it just, boop, I don't trust it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I decided, well, what happens if I trusted 5% more? And things just started lining up. I'm like, oh, this is easier. And this was just natural cascade of growth and integration started happening. Like, I found something here. So I've been experimenting with it for like 4 months now, just exploring what does this do when I approach it from self-trust. And that's why I bring this up. And self-trust is something that I've touched on before. It's something that is alluded to in what I teach. It's been alluded to in the things I have trained in, that I have been taught, in my own therapy, but it's never been explicitly focused on in a deliberate manner. And this is cool. This is one of those innovations, because if you've been with me for a while, you've seen me evolve. You've seen me change as how I present things, but also my concepts and how we work with codependency, work with ourself has evolved. This is one of those evolutions. This is the magic of it, because I'm a discoverer. I'm an explorer. I like finding out new things and playing with them and see what they do. And this is one of them. So, self-trust, my friends. What is it? It is a confidence in the legitimacy of your being. That's my definition of it. There's other definitions out there, but I choose this one for one specific reason: legitimacy of my being. Because the being word encompasses everything. That's my thoughts, my feelings, my senses, my perceptions, my past, my present, my future, my desires, my wants, my needs, boundaries, all that. All get to be contained in the being. And then that word legitimacy. I use this word a lot. But legitimacy means it's valid and real to me. So self-trust is basically a high confidence that I am real and valid. That's it. That's all it needs to be. Because from there, it's like, well, my feelings are legitimate. I can trust the legitimacy, the validity of my emotions, which can help me understand where they're coming from, what I call valid or rational premise is. Because emotions aren't just this random thing that happens. Like I'm walking down the street and wham, random emotion. It can feel that way, especially when we're first starting out, coming into understanding our emotional landscape, what our conditioning and programming has been for us. But when you start listening to it, these emotions have some real important validity. In fact, it's because of self-trust that I have gotten into the deep awareness of the impact of parentification on my life. It's like, this makes sense. I can trust that my sense here of hurt, shame, panic, and guilt are valid because I was made responsible for making another person feel better about themselves. And when I didn't, I got harmed. Trusting that, trusting the legitimacy of these experiences and feelings I went through, I am out of my own way. So in 2022, it's all about self-trust. I mean, that's the first course I'm teaching in 2022. It's January 17th. Enrollment for that will open up when we do the 5-day Freedom from Codependency Challenge. So, and that's free. You can enroll for that by clicking the link above on Facebook, below on YouTube, or go to my website, freetheself.com. You can also start this practice of self-trust right now with the first literal practice that I'll be teaching in the course by getting the self-trust guide, the Restoring Self-Trust Guide, which is also linked above on Facebook, below on YouTube, and on my website. So I want to get you guys into this space of self-trust so that your healing and your work can be amplified. So you don't have to take 6 years of figuring this one out. You can go like, oh, I implement this and I can start seeing things line up organically for themselves. Because this makes me alive, because I love things like this that work. I've been giving it to students, to clients, and seeing what they do with it. And I'm seeing the same results there. So come join this experiment of developing self-trust. But yeah, that's the premise of it. And this is where we're going with it. Now, the third thing for our Random Bits episode today, and this one this is kind of a blunt cake, because I will be doing a blunt cake on it. But I want to talk about it today. And so this is a moment to check in with your capacity, to check in with what you want to hear right now, what you're willing to consider, because this can be confronting. So I'm a big fan of getting consent and giving you that capacity check, because there's other coaches out there that don't, and they do blunt things, and then it hurts people, and I don't think that's a good thing. So I want to make that as safe as possible. So check in with that. Give you a second to do that here. Just check in with your body. Am I open to some bluntness today? It's something that might be confronting. And if your body's open to it, feels light, expansive, you're like, okay, yeah, let's go for it. If not, check this episode out later. All right, so moving from victim to power. Okay, first things first. Victim is not a problem. I don't look at the victim as something we got to get rid of, we got to conquer, we're going to do something with the victim. There's a lot of that out there. I don't agree with it. And the reason I don't agree with it is it causes harm. What we got to do to work with victim is to help the victim feel legitimized. Hey, yeah, you were acted upon and you didn't have power to defend yourself. And then introduce that aspect of ourselves to power, the power we have now, so that it can reintegrate with its power center and go, I can take action for myself rather than remaining in a state of reactivity to what's going on in my world. And this is a key pivot here, okay? When we come from the victim, we are in reaction to things we perceive happening to us. This is valid in certain things. It is not valid in other things. What's cool is it's still relevant and legitimate as an experience. But when we apply it to context or relevancy to a certain situation, it may not apply. This is a really important nuance to explore. So I'm going to state it a little differently. So situation A can be happening for me, and I can have, let's define situation A. I'm an adult, and situation A is someone does something mean to me. I'm an adult, has power, I'm a resource, I'm capable, I'm not dependent on this individual for anything. But they do something that harms me, all right? I'm not a victim in this. They're doing something to me, but I'm not a powerless person in my perspective. I'm a person that's in my power, which means I can respond to that rather than react to it by trying to change them. I can respond to it by dictating my behaviors that will occur in response to what they did. I get to choose what I do rather than try to change them and stop them from doing it. This is the nuance here. When I come from a victim perspective, I'm like, they're doing this to me and I am powerless to do anything about it, so I need to control them. Now, if I was a child and situation A was happening, I don't have a lot of resources. I don't have a lot of capability or power in the situation. So my natural response is to fawn, freeze. Maybe I'll fight it or flee from it if I can, but if I can't, I'm going to likely fawn and freeze into it, which means I'm going to try to please it, which is a means of trying to control and influence the way it's behaving so it'll stop doing it. That's very, very valid if we're in that kind of dynamic. But a lot of times when we're healing, we're growing, we're still over here in the 3-year-old, 6-year-old self. I'm over here in my 43-year-old self going, whoa, this is going on, and I'm going to respond to it from the 5-year-old perspective. I've got to evolve that. And this is the pivot. Okay? And I started with boundaries. I found that to be an easy, put that in quotes, easy, a simple place to start from. Basically what this looks like is in situation A, I'm the adult. I have my power, my resource. So rather than reacting to it from victim state, hey, you need to stop doing this. That's usually how the powerless statement will emerge. You stop doing this. You do this. You stop doing this and you do this instead because this is sad. You make me feel sad. I feel hurt by this. Okay? Because the power is over there in our minds. We're like, they've got to stop doing that. In the pivot, when we come back to our power, the power is, you're doing this. I feel this way about it. Here are my values and my boundaries. Here's what I'm going to do in response to it. If you do it again, please treat me this way. So it'd be like this. Situation A, person comes over to my house like, Marshall, that is the most god-awful, ugly car you've that thing is disgusting. Get rid of it. If you don't, I'm gonna tow it away, or I'm gonna beat it up with a bat, or I'm going to put marks on it. They're just, bleh. I'd be like, victim, I'm like, oh, I've got to make them like the car. Maybe I'll get rid of the car. That's the powerless approach. The power approach is, oh, Mr. Neighbor, I understand you don't like the car. And it's my car. I'm going to own it. This is mine. I don't appreciate being threatened. If you threaten me again, I will contact the police and we're going to bring in some legal fun into this. Otherwise, you can get used to me owning this car because it's not going to change. Notice what I've done there. I dictated what I didn't like, and I dictated what I'm going to do if they do it again. I am not controlling their behavior or attempting to control it. I'm defining what my behavior will be, outlining the consequence that will emerge if they take action with that boundary. This is how power works. It's internally focused. It's self-oriented. Okay, well, what will I do in response to this when they do that? That's where we have moved from codependency back to our sovereignty, back to our autonomy. So now we're not concerned about what other people are doing. We're concerned about what we're going to do in response to it. We're no longer over here trying to change or control someone. Instead, we're observing what they do, and then we're aligning our responses to what they do based on what works for us, our values, our well-being, our happiness. This takes work. It's not exactly an easy pivot because it can feel really intense to approach someone that way because we're used to trying to find safety by regulating the other person. In this approach, we're creating sustainable safety by establishing boundaries that operate on our power. They're contingent on our power, dependent on us, rather than the other person. This is the emergence of self-autonomy or sovereignty. And this is where your power's at. We all have to make this pivot at some point in our lives if we're to graduate into adulthood and really understand, own, and utilize our personal power in ways that produce well-being and happiness for us. So it's a biggie, and it is a practice. That doesn't mean the victim state is wrong, bad, needs to be shamed or guilted. None of that. That needs to be cared for and nurtured into this state of power. That way we have a whole integrated sense of self rather than, oh, I got rid of the victim by, bad victim. More like I grew up. I matured out of victim into my power. So that's today's random bit episode. Let me know what you guys' thoughts on this are in the comments below. Thank you, Pamela and Robin and Satori, for sharing your thoughts here today. I appreciate your presence and your kindness. And good job. We're doing courageous work, my friends. It is no easy task to reclaim ourselves from abuse, neglect, parentification, and narcissistic enmeshment, things of that nature. So take a moment, consider praising and appreciating yourself and your efforts and what you have discovered in your world. And then go get that self-trust guide and start restoring that. Join the 5-day Freedom from Codependency Challenge that starts here on January 10th. And go gently with yourself. And I will see you guys in our next episode. Bye-bye.